In the shadow of the Great Pyramid, carved from a single outcrop of limestone that predates the pharaohs themselves, the Sphinx faces east. For more than 4,000 years it has stared at the rising sun, its eroded features unreadable, but the question that ancient sources claim it posed to every traveler who passed was not a riddle about man. It was a test of power disguised as a game, and its echo has never stopped reverberating. The riddle, as most people know it, comes from Sophocles, written around 429 before Christ. In the playwright's version, the Sphinx asks, "What creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?" The answer, man, who crawls as a baby, walks upright as an adult, and uses a cane in old age. It seems clean, neat, almost comforting. The monster was defeated by cleverness, and the clever man became king of Thebes. But here is where the common version begins to crack. The oldest surviving visual depiction of the Sphinx and Oedipus encounter appears on a Greek wine cup from around 470 before Christ. On that cup, the Sphinx is perched on a column, her wings spread, her claws extended over the head of a kneeling Oedipus, and she is not asking one question. She is offering a challenge. The vase shows her mouth open, mid-speech, with Greek letters written in the field around her, and Oedipus reaching up toward her with his hand extended as if about to receive something. Some scholars argue the vase depicts a ritual transaction, not a conversational exchange. Remember the moment in your life when someone in power asked you a question that was never really about the answer. The job interview where the question was simple, but the real test was how you handled the pressure. The performance review where the criteria were clear on paper, but the actual evaluation measured something else entirely: loyalty, composure, or willingness to defer. You knew even as you answered that the surface question was a mask. The real test happened beneath it. That is the Sphinx's riddle, not a query but an assessment. The surface question was a mask. The real test happened beneath it. That is the kind of hidden layer this channel exists to reveal. If you want to keep learning how to read what is not spoken, subscribe. And in the comments, share a moment when you realized a powerful question was not really about the answer, when the assessment was hidden in plain sight. The Greek historian Apollodorus, writing in the 2nd century before Christ, records a detail that the stage version forgot. The Sphinx was not merely a monster who killed those who failed. She was a creature of plague. She appeared outside Thebes at the moment the city was suffering, under a curse sent by Hera. The riddle was not an arbitrary puzzle. It was embedded in a crisis. And those who failed were not simply eaten. They were seized by her claws and torn apart, cast from the high cliff onto the rocks below. The question was literally a matter of life and death. Now shift your attention to a different world, but the same architecture. In the year 1932, a young man named Richard Sorge arrived in Tokyo. He was a German journalist, publicly a member of the Nazi Party, personally a communist spy. His mission was to infiltrate the highest levels of the Japanese government and report back to the Soviet Union. But to do that, he had to first pass a test that no manual could prepare him for. The test came during his first meeting with Colonel Eugen Ott, a German military attaché. Ott asked Sorge a simple question about his background. Sorge answered perfectly. Ott then asked him a second question, seemingly casual, about a mutual acquaintance. Sorge answered that too, but the third question was different. Ott leaned forward and asked Sorge what he thought about the Russo-Japanese War of 1904. For any ordinary journalist, the answer would be diplomatic, but Sorge realized instantly that Ott was not testing his knowledge of the war. He was testing whether Sorge was willing to think independently, to take a position that differed from the official Nazi line. Sorge answered honestly, offering a nuanced critique of both sides. Ott smiled. The real test had been passed. Sorge was in. The same invisible evaluation runs through every initiation of power, from the ancient mystery cults of Eleusis to modern corporate boards. The Eleusinian Mysteries, celebrated for nearly 2,000 years from around 1500 before Christ until the 4th century after Christ, required initiates to undergo a series of tests before they could witness the sacred rites. The first test was purification in the sea. The second was a fast. The third was a question: have you done what is required? The priest did not ask for specifics. The initiate had to prove, through the quality of their response, that they understood the deeper law beneath the ritual. Fail that question, and the mysteries remained closed forever. The Sphinx was not asking about man because she wanted to know the definition of a bipedal creature. She was asking because she wanted to measure the quality of the mind that answered. And the quality the Greeks valued above all in their mythic heroes was not intelligence as we define it today. Speed of processing, memory, factual recall. It was sophrosyne. The word translates roughly to soundness of mind, self-control, the ability to
The
see
answer is
clearly
man.
without being blinded by fear or
He
pride.
crawls on all fours
When
as a
Oedipus
baby,
answered the riddle,
walks
he did not
upright in
simply
his
produce the
prime,
correct
and uses
word.
a cane
He
in old
demonstrated
age.
that he could see the full shape of human life, infancy, adulthood, old age, without flinching from its mortality. That is why he became king. Now walk forward in time another 2,000 years. In the year 2011, a group of researchers at the University of Chicago published a study on the psychology of hiring interviews. They analyzed hundreds of interviews for executive-level positions across major corporations and found something unexpected. The candidates who received job offers were not the ones with the highest technical scores or the most impressive resumes. They were the ones who passed what the researchers called the hidden threshold. The moment early in the interview when the interviewer stops listening to the words and begins evaluating the candidate's emotional presence.
When we look
The
at the
candidates
data,
who passed
the
that
path
threshold did
forward
not
is
answer
clear.
more correctly.
It requires
They answered
steady
more
leadership
authentically, with
and a
composure
commitment to
and
our shared
self-awareness.
values.
The real test, the study concluded, was not the questions themselves, but the candidate's ability to manage the relational tension beneath them. The Sphinx and the executive interviews share the same secret structure. Both present a surface problem. Solve this riddle. Answer these questions. While the actual test operates at a different level. The surface problem is a distraction. The real assessment is invisible. And this is why the Sphinx's riddle is not about man. It is about power. The power to read what is not spoken. The power to recognize that every encounter with authority contains a hidden layer. Consider the earliest known written version of the riddle, which appears in the Greek Scholia, ancient commentary on classical text, rather than in a play. The Scholiast reports that the riddle was actually 3 questions, not 1. The Sphinx asked, "What has a voice yet is silent? What walks on land yet cannot leave the earth?" And finally, what changes form, yet remains the same? The first answer is the echo. The second is the shadow. The third is man. In this version, the Sphinx's test was not a single clever observation, but a sequence designed to reveal how the mind works under pressure. Can you hold 3 layers simultaneously? Can you see the pattern that connects them? Only a person capable of that kind of layered perception was fit to rule. The Sphinx herself, in the earliest Greek art, is not a lion with a woman's head. She is a hybrid of lion, woman, and bird of prey. Her name comes from the Greek word sphigo, which means to bind tight or to strangle. She is the one who constricts. She is the pressure that forces a person to show who they truly are. And when Oedipus answered correctly, the binding broke. She did not simply disappear. She threw herself from the Acropolis of Thebes, her body crashing onto the rocks below. The test was over. The pressure had done its work. But here is where the myth pivots towards something far more unsettling than a monster's suicide. The binding broke, yes, but the test did not end. It simply changed form. Oedipus became king of Thebes, married the widowed queen Jocasta, and ruled for years with wisdom and strength. The city prospered. The plague lifted. It seemed the riddle had been fully answered, the ordeal conquered, until the second layer of the test revealed itself. Oedipus had answered the riddle about man without knowing who he truly was. He had solved the abstract question but failed the concrete one. The man who killed his father at a crossroads, the man who married his mother, the man who fled his own prophecy only to walk directly into it. That man was himself. The Sphinx's question had not been answered completely. The correct response was not man as a category. The correct response was me. The monster's test was never about general knowledge. It was about self-knowledge. Consider what this means for the structure of every power test. The interview, the initiation, the performance review. None of them ask the question directly. They force you to demonstrate the answer through your behavior. The Sphinx asked, "What is man?" But the real question, the one she could not speak aloud because it had to be discovered, was, "Who are you?" And Oedipus gave the universal answer while remaining blind to his own particular truth. That is why his story ends not with triumph, but with self-blinding. He finally saw what he had missed the first time. Oedipus answered the universal but remained blind to his own particular truth. That is the trap the Sphinx set for him, and the same trap awaits anyone who mistakes abstraction for self-knowledge. If you are ready to face the concrete questions you have been avoiding, subscribe and tell us in the comments, what is one thing you have learned about yourself that surprised you, something the surface questions never revealed? This pattern repeats in every culture that has a version of the Sphinx riddle. The Babylonian myth of the guardian at the gate, who asks the traveler, "What did your mother whisper at your birth?" The Egyptian Book of the Dead, where the deceased must answer the questions of 42 divine judges, each demanding knowledge not of facts but of the soul's own deeds. The Buddhist koan, where the master asks, "What was your original face before your parents were born?" Across all traditions, the test follows the same architecture. The surface question is a distraction. The real examination is whether you can recognize yourself. What happens to a person who faces that test and cannot answer? The Sphinx tore them apart. The modern equivalent is subtler, but no less final. The executive who cannot pass the hidden threshold is never hired. The initiate who cannot demonstrate understanding is never admitted. The soul that cannot answer the divine judges is devoured by the monster Ammit in Egyptian tradition. But the punishment in every case stems from the same failure, not ignorance of the facts, but blindness to the self. Now consider the most troubling implication. If the Sphinx's test is a universal architecture of power, then what happens when the test is applied to an entire civilization? And what happens when that civilization fails it, not because its citizens cannot answer, but because the test itself has been forgotten? The Greek playwrights understood something that the modern world has largely lost. The Sphinx did not appear in Thebes randomly. She appeared because the city had committed an injustice against the gods. The curse of Hera preceded her. The plague that gripped the city was the result of a deeper corruption. The Sphinx was not a whim of fate. She was a consequence. The test was also a punishment, and the only way to pass it was to face the truth the city had been avoiding. The same logic applies at the scale of every nation, every institution, every era. The monster at the gate appears because something is wrong inside. The riddle is not arbitrary. It is calibrated to reveal the specific blindness that caused the crisis. Answer correctly, and the binding breaks. Answer incorrectly, and the monster tears you apart. But the monster is not the enemy. The monster is the mechanism of revelation. She constricts until the hidden truth emerges. The monster appears because something is wrong inside. That truth applies to every institution, every civilization, every era of crisis. Subscribe to keep following this thread into the architecture of revelation, the hidden sickness that summons its own Sphinx. And leave a comment. What modern injustice do you suspect is calling forth a test we have not yet recognized as a riddle? This is why the Sphinx's question was never about man. It was always about the city, about the kingdom, about the soul of a civilization facing its own reflection. And the answer was never a word. It was an act of recognition. The riddle of the ages is not asked by a winged lion crouched on a rock. It is asked by every moment of genuine crisis, every threshold of transformation, every encounter with authority that demands more than memorized responses. It asks, can you see what is really happening? Can you see who you really are? Can you bear to look without looking away? The Sphinx has been staring east for 4,500 years, but she is not waiting. She is still asking.